Welcome to this Tuesday edition of Bury Your Bookie. I'm Jeff DeForrest, joined by a man who made perhaps one of the most critical mistakes that you could possibly make as a degenerate, and that is listening to other people.
Yeah.
So he has this incredible stat that he's been tracking, and I'm not sure. I'm going to give you credit for you certainly were the first person that brought it up to me. I had not seen this written anywhere. I had not heard about it, and you started talking about this 5 or 6 weeks ago. That teams that played the New York Jets in the subsequent week, for whatever reason, and whatever the result was, which mostly was a win against the Jets and usually with a cover involved as well, that the subsequent week after playing the Jets, where at the time you said 1-6 against the spread, then 1-7 against the spread, then 1-8, 1-9, 1-10, 1-11. You would kill to be up 10 units in any aspect of betting if you're betting NFL, whatever category you were betting, whether it was teams to win against the point spread, over unders. If you're up 10 units with one component of your betting strategy, you would feel great about it. It's a huge edge. And sure enough, what happened? VSIN, you're one of those guys that's listening to degenerate gambling information at all times, which I love about you. And you're catching on some obscure radio broadcast a guy on VSIN going, "Hey, you know what? Teams that played the Jets the previous week are 1-11 against the spread." And now you thought that was it. I'll let you explain because you went through the
Well,
logic. And it cost you, though.
I'll give you a perfect example.
Yeah.
So the New York Yankees are playing a game during the season, had 16 straight unders. And I'm on VSiN that morning, and I'm listening. It's a Sunday morning. They're playing the Oakland A's, and they're talking about this stat from Borgata in Atlantic City. And they're saying that the last 2 or 3 days, people have been on top of this, figuring it out, and have been unloading on the under. So this morning he says, well, they're betting the A's slightly as a 2-1 underdog, and they're betting the under pretty heavily. We have a big price on the over. So I call my buddy, who's the skeptic, who just says there's a big gambler and says whenever he hears a trend, he always goes the other way because once everybody knows it, it bets and the bookies don't lose.
Right.
And sure enough, he says, get on the over. And then I said, you know what? You might be right. So that day was a day that I looked at the over. And then what happened was the over came in 10 times in a row with the Yankees. So they went from 16 straight unders to 10 straight overs. So these trends happen, and it's like, when do you get them and when do you get off them? And his philosophy of 40 years of gambling was he knows all these trends and lists these stats, hears about injuries, but he's more a psychological bettor. And he said, once this comes out, it doesn't work. And I've been tracking him, and he's like 6-7-1 when he makes these predictions and says something that happens, and he's right. And so I looked at that last night. He said, if you're on the Dolphins, bet the Dolphins because now everybody's saying it. And the thing that I've noticed with this trend is that it really didn't matter because the prices were going against that team. So Atlanta was an 8.5-point dog against Seattle coming off the Jet game and ended up going off at 6.5. They carried over a key number of 7. So that meant the money was still going to Atlanta. So people weren't betting this trend like you would think they were.
Yeah.
But sure enough, that's it. And just so you know, the only cover was the Cleveland Browns against the Ravens at home, which was a last 2-minute drive for a backdoor cover to make it a 7.5-point line. They lost by 7.
Otherwise, you're having a perfect season.
That's why they could have went for 2 there, and it could have been 8. It could have been close. So any way you looked at it, you could have bought a point if you were Baltimore and bought it down to 7. You could be, with a push. It just looks like in this situation, remarkably, that this hits. And let me tell you something. What do we got this week? Jacksonville goes to Denver, laying 3. Sure, we're going to be talking about that game. 2 teams heading to the playoffs, division leaders. Guess what? I bet you Denver wins. Go to 1-13.
Easily, yes.
Yeah.
It's interesting. It's kind of like, I always love this when this happens. You'll see on the boards now where they post the numbers that are on the roulette wheel. They don't always do this, but it's become probably more common than that. And you'll see like a sea of black as you're passing by the roulette wheel where the last 16 numbers have come up black.
Yeah.
And then some rapper or some guy that looks like he's got nothing but money falling out of his pockets will take a stack of cash out, like 10 grand in a wrapper or 5 grand in a wrapper, and put it on red. And you're thinking that seems very logical. Eventually the trend's got to reverse, but each roll is a 50-50 proposition. So, and not even that, right? Because there's always the possibility it lands on 0, 00, and now never does the house do anything that usually falls in favor of the players. They've added in 000 roulette,
Crazy.
which may as well
Unbelievable.
be Russian roulette. I mean, they may as well
Right.
just put a revolver there now and
Yeah,
load.
now you're at almost 46% chance on a 50-50 payoff bet. I mean, it's just it's a complete money grab in these casinos. The fun roulette story, and I'll give it be quick. We're getting destroyed. This is around 2000 out there in the Atlantis and in the Bahamas.
Yeah.
And my buddy says, I said, give me a couple $100. Let's just do something. What's your two favorite numbers? What's my two favorite numbers? And we went out and threw $100 on the four numbers.
Okay.
And honestly, with all the blackjack laws, we hit it 4 out of 7 times we tried it. Picked up the money. Yeah, we made like 14 grand off this. Just hitting this, trying this weekend. And we did it random for 3 days, like twice a day. Just, we can't do this. We go. We won, we lost, and we hit 2 in a row, and we lost, and we hit 1. And we were just looking at each other, cracking up. His numbers and my numbers. And consistently, I played, so I had a 9-1 shot when you get on there, well, not counting 00. And you're thinking you got a chance. And I would always look at the board. When I look at a board, I see, is my numbers coming up? How would I have done instead of playing them now?
Sure.
Whenever I sit down, I just play the same 4 numbers, a quarter away when I do, and I haven't sat down.
What are those numbers? So other people
15, 16, 17, and 27. Crazy. I've been just absolutely crazy when you see it. And it's like, we just walked through a whole thing, statement, and I would sit there and
nice score though, $100.
Yeah, I mean, it's just, you play those 4 numbers, $100 roll, and they give you credit, they give you the time in, and you sit there places, no thinking, no going to different avenues. And I'm telling you, you lose 9 rolls in a row, but you'll get 1 hit, and then sure enough, you're almost back to even. So that was just a philosophy, but that's just like you said. Now you don't want to do it because I've never played a roulette wheel with 3 zeros on it. I won't. As soon as I see it, I just walk away.
No, it's almost it's funny to even walk up on one of those.
Yeah.
And naturally, if you get on a run on roulette, there's no greater game, I guess, craps, because everybody's cheering and going crazy. Whereas in roulette, you're usually the lone guy hitting, and everybody else is staring in stunned disbelief that their numbers, should be subject to change almost immediately. But I always get a kick out of that when a guy puts a giant stack of money on the red or black, depending on which one is showing up on the board, and goes against the trend. And sure enough, it hits again, and the guy walks away feeling like a fool, or else doubles it, only to lose.
I tell you what, 16 in a row, that's unbelievable. I don't know if I've ever seen. I've seen 9 or 10.
I'm exaggerating to make a point.
Yeah, okay. I was going to say, that's pretty impressive.
Yeah, but you'll just like a sea of red or a sea of black, and you're thinking, okay, I'm going to go the other way. And you did it last night. I mean, unfortunately, you got talked into the whole idea because your brilliant theory, and there's no technical or rational logic behind a team suffering the subsequent week against the point spread because they played the stinking New York Jets, who were horrible.
I mean, let's look at another one, too, that came out on the same program that's talking about it. Devin A-Chain, over 81.5 yards, right? He's been over that number for the last 4 games, and Pittsburgh's got the worst rushing defense and missing TJ Watt. Oh, it's a lock. Go. 67. It's like you just, you get these trends, and this is what he's talking about. Once they start talking about trends 4 or 5 times in a row, the mathematical odd of the gamble is that eventually the line gets pushed to protect it. And now you're pulling back and you're saying, okay, maybe 81.5 is a really weird number, and that's it. It's like I saw some very weird numbers in that game last night as I was looking around, and as far as props and all that stuff goes. And it's really different game now, how they're manipulating and doing things and where the action's coming from and what they're doing. And so I thought the game last night, I thought Miami was in it, had chances earlier on. And, I thought McDaniel might have wanted gone for that on the 4th and inches on their own 30 instead of punting the possessions. But I didn't see much of the second half. I watched the whole first half, and I was kind of thinking Miami should be in the game. I saw the final score. I'm like, wow, the defense kind of let up. But for Pittsburgh, I think what we're seeing is now they go to Detroit this week. Baltimore hosts New England. So we have the 2 games where if that looks like that could be a potential split. Very shocking line that Baltimore's 3 over New England. I'm shocked at that number. I know they played well, but remember, Joe Burrow, like you could
They seem like they've been overrated all year, don't they?
Yeah, you could find a psychological edge of gambling. Like I don't know if we really talked in depth about this, but Joe Burrow say he's not having fun. Should have been an eye opener to everybody saying, "What the hell?" We got T. Higgins out, and Joe Burrow saying he's not having fun, and then they run the stats on him that Andrew Luck retired with less sacks and less game in more games than Joe Burrow did. Joe Burrow's played like 8 or 9 less games and has 20 more sacks than Andrew Luck does at this point in his career. You know, what is Cincinnati doing? So now the rumors, and you hear it on sports talk radio in New York, do we trade Jackson Dart for Joe Burrow? And I'm saying no. I talked to 3 guys about it. No one wants to. Can you imagine? We don't want to trade Jackson Dart for Joe Burrow now. They're saying he's injury. He's 50 million against the cap. Like all this different way of looking at this sport now is different. But it's like Aaron Rodgers. Think about this too. Aaron Rodgers calls out his teammates for saying they're not focused. They don't run the audible right. We have outside activities, outside the facility activities that no one's really showing up. And I'm demanding everybody shows up. Mike Tomlin immediately backs him. They go to Baltimore, get a win, and now they beat Miami. Like, there's certain things about the psychological aspect of what I'm watching in the NFL now is, do these teams and players buy in? Because they're going to get hurt. It's hard to play in this league. The contact's immense. Every hit. I mean, I know what it was like in '84, sitting 2 feet from a guy running 20 miles an hour, hitting a 280-pound lineman that's running just as fast. And that's then. Can you imagine what it's like now to be on the sidelines for the contact and the impact? So does the player have that mindset to want to play? And what I saw with my Giants, and I'll talk about it in the next couple of minutes, was absolutely that looks like at times this team is not all in. And I think that's what you have to find now. And the team to me that looks like they're all in is the Houston Texans right now. So if I had to take a little long shot, someone that might come in from the wild card, has only been since the 2000 and Giants 2007 wild card game. I think only 2 wild card teams have made the Super Bowl. I'm looking at, there's a team right now that I don't know if I want to face when playoff time comes around, because their offensive line's playing better. Stroud looks a little better, and their defense is top notch, probably the best in the league.
All right. And you emphasized this yesterday as well. I'm not sure if we talked about this yesterday on the show or not, because sometimes when you do enough of these shows, not just this one, but the other things that we do, they tend to blend together. But I know we mentioned the idea that one of the greatest bets of all time, and including the entire spectrum in the history of gambling, I thought was Rory McIlroy's old man walking into some British bookmaking shop when Rory was like an embryo and betting that he would win the British Open. I mean, that took a lot of balls, a lot of chutzpah, as we say, as we celebrate Hanukkah here on the show. But if anybody, and I would think maybe you would have a ticket on this, if anybody I know would be inclined to make a wager of this type. Can you imagine what you could have received if you could have found somebody that would have booked that Phillip Rivers would start games for the Indianapolis Colts this year before the season started?
Not a chance.
What kind of price? I mean,
they wouldn't even have a price. It would have to be well over, the max bet.
You would have got lower odds on Colin Kaepernick being.
Well, let's look at this. Odds to win the NFL championship. I think the peak odd is like 200 to 1, maybe 500 to 1. This had to be a longer shot than that. I mean, a million to 1. I mean, you don't know.
Right.
But when I had the conversation, like I said, with the young gentleman that's coaching with him, and that he's been preparing for this, and this was talked about last year. So someone would have known that if they thought there was a line on it, and put a bet in.
Happening still.
Yeah, and I think the more you get these obscure bets like this is like where it gets interesting, because the first pitch with this guy Clase and Ortiz that are going to jail probably from the Guardians was a silly bet that was put out there that shouldn't have been put out there by a book that was more of a prop book and a fantasy type site that decides we're going to put anything out there to make money. And then sure enough, it gets orchestrated that a player can go do this stuff, on an individual basis. When a guy's shaving points, he's doing it to hurt the team bet. And that was what it was when you had Headache Smith doing it at Arizona State in the 90s and all that stuff. This is a dangerous path that we're going. So if you would have put a bet on that for $1,000,000 and someone would have put $20 on it and pays Phillip Rivers $5 million to go back to work and give it a shot and try to convince somebody you can still play, I mean, that could happen.
I thought you sniff out a conspiracy on this.
Well, I mean, that's the whole thing, Jeff. Is like, do you even put a line on it? We're looking at some crazy things to bet.
Nobody you would, but you would think any bookmaker would have taken that bet because it appeared to be beyond the virtual impossibility. And look, if somebody had said that to you, you would have had them Baker acted. Hey, you know what? Phillip Rivers is winning in this league this year. Phillip Rivers. You're like, hey, get out of here. Joan Rivers has a better chance. That's insane. So, that I thought maybe if anybody would have done it, it would be you. that you would have had futures action on Philip
Yeah.
Rivers being a starter in the NFL
No,
in
but
2000.
look, Jeff, I thought he did okay. I thought he was fine. I just think he couldn't really get the ball down the field, and I think people are going to find that, and he'll
Yeah.
get exposed in that way. He's got to figure a way to throw a 30-yard ball down the field to just loosen up the safeties, and the press corner is going to come out. It's going to be harder on his receivers because you're going to have to guard him for a split second less because you're not worried about him running, and you're doing
Hard
things.
to believe he's playing in games though with as they say playoff implications.
Yeah.
Riding because the Colts losers of 4 in a row now. Are at 8-6,
I mean,
and
it's going to be a high-rated game when 49ers go to Indianapolis Monday night. I think ESPN's got something because I think people are going to watch this to see exactly what happens after seeing that he competed last week.
all right, one game on the NBA slate tonight, Mike Jones. I know you have the Big Gunner podcast coming up, and you'll be ripping into your New York Giants once again. They certainly gave you. I mean, you either want your teams. I've found this over the years of doing this. You either want your teams, your local teams, or whoever it is you're talking about now on a podcast, because you have many people dedicating specific shows to certain teams. You either want your team to be doing great, like championship caliber, or really, really bad.
Yeah.
The middle ground, talking about the
Yeah.
Miami Dolphins on shows just absolutely sucks because it's the same old song. Same old song every year, the same thing. Mediocrity has set in, and we haven't had that feeling here since 1969. Actually, 3 years later, 72 or 73. But that's a long time to go without a title. The Giants are, last championship they won. It seems like it was long enough ago for
Yeah.
that to be a distant memory. But it's great when their team is really bad. If a team's mediocre, there's nothing to talk about. So the Big Gunner thing today ought to be a real shindig, and and then I don't know if you dabble in the Jets at all. That's probably
Yeah.
past because they fired their defensive coordinator after he gave up like 80 points in the last 2 games. So
Right.
I mean, that was a move that you could have anticipated. All right. NBA tonight. Speaking of defense, how do you defend Victor Wembanyama? I saw a handicapping proposition bet that. I mean, as they always do. I mean, the guy writes about this thing, and he's got several paragraphs justifying his position here, theorizing about the over/under in the first quarter of the Knicks game against the San Antonio Spurs tonight. All right, this is what the world has come to. Over/under first quarter total, which the total is 55 and a hook. His logic is just send it in on the over in this particular situation because, and here's where I come down to your theory about once the public knows about something, go against it. When you read like totally pristine logic in any handicapping column, my inclination is to say go against it. Because the Knicks are averaging over 33 points in the first quarter. And since Wembanyama came back from the injury a month on the shelf in his last game, he did not play in the first quarter of San Antonio's semifinal game. So you're thinking they probably do that again. That are they going to stress out Wembanyama, who said that he was gassed on several occasions, that he didn't have the lung capacity yet to run up and down an NBA speed. So you would have to think they don't put him out there in the first quarter, which this guy speculates that turns when he's not on the floor. San Antonio turns into like a real run and gun type of Paul Westhead sort of philosophy, and they're racing up and down the court, not wasting a lot of times on the shot clock. They're not dribbling around there and firing one up with 0.3 of a second to go on the shot clock. So that there will be a lot of scoring in the first quarter. Should we immediately go against that, Mike Jones? Because this was so brilliantly laid out. You're thinking, well, if the Knicks even fall short of their average, San Antonio only needs like 26 points when they're running up and down the floor like madmen. Or is this an automatic under that I brought this up?
I don't know, but 55 and a half seems kind of low. So the total's around 221 in the game, 220, you would say.
I have it right here. Yeah, 220 and a hook.
Yeah, so
229 and a hook. 229 and a hook.
Right, so they're saying right now that's a big number. Then
Yeah.
they're saying it's under. So you're saying if 229 and a hook comes in, that shows that should be 57 and a half. That's what I thought it would be earlier.
Yeah.
So I would incline to take the over just because the Knicks have been playing a little pace a little bit too. But I'm not touching it. But I can tell you that it's an interesting way of handicapping that. You think if Wembanyama isn't on the court, you're going to let it go. And I think the Knicks, I think when he's not on the court, the Knicks might have a tendency to run. Not well, even when he's on, because you don't want to get an half court set with a guy who could just sit there and pivot to your rim at 7'5". So you might see the Knicks want to play a little tempo tonight.
All right, so you're agreement with this guy, gentleman's name, just to give him credit here, that wrote this, Malik Smith, somebody named Malik Smith.
Okay.
Knicks are 2.5-point favorites. I don't know. Are you getting involved in this game, or
we're not getting involved? I think
of NHL games.
I would say the Knicks proving a point. Be good for the league to get the Knicks any kind of cup or whatever to raise. When New York's better, that's it. I don't really know. I think San Antonio's probably got with Wembanyama. I think this might be his coming out party for the national audience to see a single game. And Victor Wembanyama, who's claiming he self-proclaimed now, he thinks he might be the best player in the world. Said that in an interview recently. So so it's like, he thinks he's a factor when he plays his game. So, and he's getting better and better. We knew this would come. This day's going to come.
Nikola Jokic.
Yeah, that's what he said. He said Jokic is the best offensive player in the game, and maybe might be the best overall player. But he definitely made reference to Jokic for sure. Just to me, I'm looking at it like early on season, probably a real game, probably playoff type atmosphere. Should be fun in Vegas. I would lean a little bit. Knicks line says, when in doubt, take the underdog, like Grandma says, and that would be kind of it. I'd kind of stay away. I'm looking at the ice tonight a little bit. I think Anaheim, after a 4-1 win in New York, goes to Columbus. Columbus, a good home team. I like Columbus a little bit. And the Minnesota Wild, after the acquisition of Quinn Hughes, gets the Ovechkin and the Capitals coming to town. So I'm going to lean a little bit toward the Minnesota Wild, who are playing better hockey, and Kaprizov gets the big deal, and he's been on a roll. He's getting his 20th goal the other night.
Listen to you.
We're rolling it. And then and football, I said last week, 7-point spread on the Giants would be worth it. I see 2.5, and it went to 3. Minnesota Vikings -3 over my Giants. I don't know who makes that line, but it's so weird that you almost got to take the Giants.
Doesn't it? Yeah.
I mean, doesn't that seem like it? I mean, Minnesota playing 2 great games in a row. McCarthy looks a lot better.
Sure.
Going to play all weather, but last year they destroyed us, 28-6. Brian Flores mentioned John Mara and the Mara family and the Giants in the lawsuit. Does he either make a play for the job as a head coach, get interviewed, or does he want to step on the Giants' toes and step on it? I have a ton of respect for Minnesota's defense. I think it's top 5 in the league. We'll see if the Giants want to show up and play hard. What I'm seeing out of this team is they're not all in mentally. That's what I got last week.
Yeah,
and so that would be what I'll talk about. But I think that's it. So that's an early pick for me would be the Vikings. But probably everybody says it's biased. It's coming from emotion because we stink. So you have to be careful how you interpret that. But if you're going to look at it. And then the other game I like too is I do like Denver regardless of the jet factor. I like Denver at home against Jacksonville. I thought they showed me a lot against Green Bay. And, Jacksonville going on the road, playing that altitude, a little colder than it should be, than 60 degrees last week. We'll see what Trevor Lawrence and Jacksonville has to go on. So, those are the games I'm kind of looking at, sinking my teeth in. I don't like to bet 2 favorites this time of the year because I always think that. But one last stat, too, to throw out at you. So teams that needed the game were 11-9 against the spread. So teams with something to play for that had to play. And that counts like a game like the Bills and the New England were both teams covered, and Chiefs and Chargers were both teams that had to cover, win and loss. So you're looking at all that has to happen, and that's it. And another game I'm thinking, no Patrick Mahomes, but Kansas City still 3.5 at Tennessee. What is Kansas City going to go out there for? They lost their guy. They're not playing well. Their offensive line's decimated.
Out of the playoffs.
I mean, do they go out there and are they bought in? And I think this is where it comes down to my Andy Reid factor. This is the first time Andy Reid, no motivation at this time of the year, I think, that I can remember. Never with Kansas City. They've always were playing for something. And so this is just a drain on these guys, players, and with their guy getting hurt and all that. That's a game that I don't know.
Who even is the backup quarterback for the Kansas City Chiefs?
Gardner Minshew. Minshew.
He had a brief period of insanity,
right,
as an NFL quarterback.
Yeah, I mean, he's fun. He tries to create. He extends plays. He's fun to watch. I mean, he's not a bad guy to put on the screen when you watch him. But
not the worst. I don't know how he's played of late, but at that time, he was with Jacksonville, and he was doing some decent things. So, 2 things come to mind as we close things out. Number one, the line out of American Gangster, which should apply to all degenerates. Quitting while you're ahead is not the same as quitting. And never go against yourself, Mike Jones. You
I
came up
will.
with the
You got
stat.
to lecture. You can lecture me on this one. It's kind of like my trend, and I've been giving it out. Now all of a sudden, I
Found
take.
out about it. Yeah.
I hope the listeners thought that I was the nutty one, not the trend. So
Yeah.
it's kind of like maybe we got
Most
to
of the
do it. But
people
yeah,
probably were onto the idea that here's a man going against his very gut instinct that he
yeah.
has been following. I mean, just a perfectly victorious, amazingly consistent oddball stat out of nowhere. There's no real reason. There's no logical attachment for teams that have played the Jets the previous week to be bad the following week
I
against.
mean, overall, when you talk, how has the NFL treated so far this season? Treated the gambler? I'm not talking to a lot of guys that are knocking it dead. I saw a guy
Some
put
guys
out.
are doing real well. A couple of handicappers actually were like 20, 25 games up on the season, picking
Okay,
up games. And of course, there's always a guy that you think is an expert. In this
yeah,
case, guy that's
I was
trying
very funny. I
to.
saw a guy on X put out stuff, and I followed some of these guys, handicappers online. He gave a play in 15 games this weekend
Yeah,
and went 3-12, and he started with Atlanta.
seen
So he
some other.
technically went 2-12 on Sunday, looking at everything. And I
Wow.
was sitting there watching this, like, wow, this is really amazing.
12 is how that first
Yeah.
the
And
jump.
I like a guy who puts it out there, on X and says, okay, this is what we're giving out, what we're taking, what we're doing. And he does it. I think that's what the next level has to be is you want to talk about the stats, put your games online and let people see them and maybe click a button and get paid if you have to. But I want to see the guy's records a little bit before you go in. I always like Dr. Bob, who's a popular guy,
Yeah,
has over 15,000 customers, made a great living doing it. But he would post he had a 38% win percentage in 2006. And I'm like, wow, that's really good that you post that we lost for all sports. And he said this year, I heard him on the radio last week. He said this year, my pro football has actually been better than my college, which never really happened. So there's
yeah.
another guy I like guys like that are honest.
Even on the best of handicaps. All right, we got to run. You got the big
Okay.
guy up here in just a few minutes on NoFilter.net. For Mike Jones, I'm Jeff DeForrest. Good luck, everybody, with all of your wagers. We'll watch that first quarter score and talk about it tomorrow. Recommendation embraced by Mike Jones of the over in the first quarter. I mean, whoever thought it would come to this? What does the world come to where we're talking about a first quarter over under in the Knicks versus Spurs based on the idea that Wembanyama will be on the bench for the first quarter? For Mike Jones, I'm Jeff DeForrest. See you next time on the next edition of Bury Your Bookie.